Shalom, my name is Yair Davidiy. I'm speaking to you from the region of Judah, in an area just to the east of Bethlehem, in the biblical sense, where Bethlehem was in biblical times, in the region of Judah, in liberated land, in the land of Israel. And I represent Brit-Am, an organization that finds the lost 10 tribes of Israel amongst Western nations. And today we are going to discuss the Book of Ruth. People claim that Ruth, the heroine in the Book of Ruth, was not a Moabitess, but that she was of Israelite stock. So this is not true. And those who make such claims have an agenda. They are in some cases wicked people. They have a bad ulterior motives behind what they are saying, and so we are going to counter their arguments, which are not very substantial, but they need to be answered all the same. And incidentally, this is an interesting subject. It's an interesting subject because in the course of this discussion you'll learn a little bit more about the Book of Ruth. You will see that it's interesting. You will learn knowledge concerning the subject. You will learn about it, and God willing, enjoy doing so, and it's worth knowing. So the Book of Ruth, what is the Book of Ruth? The Book of Ruth tells us about a couple from the land of Judah, from Bethlehem in Judah. They were named Elimelech and Naomi, the husband Elimelech, the wife Naomi. They lived in Bethlehem. There was a famine in the land. This was during the period of the Judges. Sometime after the Israelites had entered the land, had come out of Egypt, entered the land, conquered it, and settled in it. They were now in the land of Judah. The tribe of Judah was in the land of Judah. And they were in Bethlehem, and there was a famine. So Elimelech and his wife Naomi, they moved to Moab, which was east of the Jordan River. In the land of Moab, their sons, Mahlon and Chilion, married Moabite women. The names of the women were Ruth and Orpah. They married these women. They married these Moabite women. The Bible especially says that they are Moabite women. And after that, the men all died. All the menfolk of the family passed away. Elimelech died. Mahlon and Chilion died, and leaving Naomi alone with her two daughters-in-law. Meanwhile, Naomi had heard that God had visited his people in Bethlehem, in Judah, and so she decided to return, to go back to her homeland, to go back to her hometown. And so she set out to do so. Her two daughters-in-law went with her to the border. And at the border, Naomi turned around and exhorted them to go back, to return to their gods, to return to their people, and not to come with her because she had nothing to offer them. So Orpah, one of the Moabite women, who listened to her, heeded her, turned around and went back. And Ruth insisted, however, in going with her, staying with her. And Ruth, she said to her, "Your God will be my God, your people my people, and your ways of life will be my ways of life. Your customs will be my customs." And so they went together, and they came to Bethlehem. And in Bethlehem, Ruth met Boaz. Boaz was a relation of Naomi, of the family of Naomi. And they were married. They were married, and Boaz married Ruth. And from their union, their descendant one was King David. King David was the king of Israel, and from King David will emerge the future Messiah. So his lineage is very important. So that is the story, and we'll give you. We'll repeat the story. We'll give you a few more details, and we'll give you a few more details of what happened later on. Meanwhile, let's get into the argument. Let's see what's going on, what the people are saying. The Bible especially describes Ruth as a Moabite woman, and Ruth, chapter 1, verse 4, chapter 1, verse 22, chapter 2, verse 6, and chapter 4, verse 10. In all of these verses, Ruth is especially described as a Moabite woman. But there are hundreds of articles on the web which claim that Ruth was not a Moabite woman, but that she was of Israelite stock. So what does it matter? What difference does it make? Why go to such extremes? Why make such a why make such a claim in the first place? What difference does it make? The Bible reads the literal truth of the Bible. The literal sense of the Bible says that Ruth is a Moabite woman. Why not take it as it's written? Why not accept it like that? And if you do have such an opinion, why become so vehement, so earnest, so extreme, so even violently committed to spreading the idea that Ruth was not from Moab, that she was not a Moabitess? So the answer lies in ideology. There is a certain ideological overtones here, and also biblical exegesis, biblical commentary, to reconcile different biblical verses. That is also a factor. So we have a prohibition. There was a prohibition in the Bible, in Deuteronomy 23 verse 3. Deuteronomy 23 verse 3 says that the Moabites and Ammonites shall not be admitted into the assembly of the people of Israel. Moabites and Ammonites, Moabites and Ammonites incidentally were brother nations, both descendants of Lot, the nephew of Abraham. They were related to each other, and both of them it was forbidden to intermarry with either one of them according to the simple meaning of the biblical passages. But there was a tradition which the sages explained, also based on the biblical texts, that this prohibition applied only to the males and not to the females. Therefore, a Moabite or Ammonite female who converted to the equivalent of Judaism, accepted the customs of Israel, was recognized by the community as someone who had wanted to attach themselves to them, and so accepted. Such a person, a woman, could be married to an Israelite. That is according to the oral tradition, as the sages explained it. Now, in order to accept this, one has to recognize the validity of oral tradition, as if to say that the Jewish sages, along with the Bible, they also received instructions or directions or the authority to decide how the biblical laws were to be applied in practice. So there are certain reprobates, certain lowlives, certain types you wouldn't want to have a cup of coffee with, or wouldn't want to invite into your house, for all kinds of reasons. Certain types, they claim that the sages invented the oral tradition, that there was no oral tradition, that they don't know the Bible, that only the people, they themselves know the Bible, whereas the Jews do not. And they are against the Jewish people. Therefore, they do not want to accept the fact that Ruth was of Moabite stock. They reconcile the contradiction of Ruth having been a Moabitess and also married with the ancestor of King David, and therefore the ancestress of the future Messiah, or the person they recognize as the Messiah, and therefore this person would be illegitimate if Ruth had been a Moabitess according to them, and therefore forbidden according to them to intermarry with Israelites. They therefore say that their solution is to declare that Ruth was not a Moabitess, so we have misunderstood the book of Ruth, and that Ruth was in fact of Hebrew origin. She was an Israelitess. That's what they claim. And these are claims made by them, and so it's not so simple. They back up their claims with quotes from different biblical texts. So we'll go into what's going on, what they're talking about. What are the claims of the naysayers based upon, apart from their ideological commitment to saying no, to negating the understanding of the Book of Ruth according to its literal import, according to its literal simple meaning, and according to the explanation of the sages? What do the naysayers say? What do they say in order to back up the claims that they make? against Ruth, and incidentally this claim, it's not only against Ruth, it's also against King David. Because if they were right, it would mean, because if they are right about the sages not having the authority to explain the texts, and if they are wrong about Ruth having not been a Moabitess, as the Bible says, and they haven't got such a strong case in that direction, or in any direction, it would mean that David, God forbid, was illegitimate, and so was the future Messiah. And we have a feeling that that is what they are getting at, but they cannot come out right, straight and say it. But anyway, we take things as they are. People are as they say they are until proved otherwise, and we'll take things at their face value. So what are they saying? What are their arguments concerning Ruth? They say that since it was forbidden to intermarry with Moab or Ammon, the simple meaning of scripture reads as if Ruth was from Moab, Ruth married Boaz from Judah. From this union came David and the future Messiah. And if Ruth was a Moabitess and intermarriage with Moabites was forbidden, it might mean that her descendants could be considered illegitimate, or at least of impaired lineage. And this they do not want, or so they say. And they do not accept the sages' solution because they do not want to accept the authority of the sages. So therefore, they say that since David could not be illegitimate, therefore Ruth could not have been a Moabitess. So that is one of their arguments. The other argument is where it says, according to them, the country or the field of Moab, which Ruth came from, it doesn't mean Moab. Rather, it means an area which once belonged to Moab, which Israelites had conquered or taken over and dwelt in, but they still called it Moab after the name of the people who had lived there previously. They also say that when Ruth in the Book of Ruth is called a Moabitess, it means someone who came from this area. It means she was actually an Israelitess from this area of Israel, which was called Moab according to them. And in other words, from another part of the country, but from the same country. And they also says that Ruth says she will accept the God of Naomi and her customs. She doesn't mean that she will accept them in the future. She actually means that she has always done so and will continue to do so. And later on, when Ruth is praised by Boaz for leaving her people and her country and coming to dwell under the wings of the God of Israel, which usually is understood to mean as what it does mean, that Ruth was a foreigner, a non-Israelite who had accepted the God of Israel and had come to dwell and be amongst the people of God. They say it means that she had always been an Israelitess, but she was simply becoming a little more religious, a little more fervent than she had previously been, which is quite an astonishing assertion to make, I would say, but that's what they say more or less. And another point they claim is that Ruth, as we shall see, Ruth was married to Boaz through a form of Levirate marriage. What is a form of Levirate marriage? Literally it means that when a man died without children, and so we shall see that Ruth was married not in that same way, but in a similar way, in a way that was parallel to some degree to that Levirate marriage, we could say. Also, the marriage of Ruth to Boaz was connected with the redemption of ancestral land, and this is connected with the laws of Jubilee, as we shall explain. And they say that these laws, Levirate marriage and Jubilee and so on, were only pertinent to Israelites. They would have had no pertinence to Ruth if Ruth had not been of Israelite origin. So this is not the case, but that's what they say, so we will explain what they say and we will give answers to it. Another point they bring up is the book of Nehemiah. Nehemiah was a leader of the Jewish people after they came back from Babylon, and Nebuchadnezzar the Babylonians destroyed they destroyed Judah, they destroyed Jerusalem and the first temple, and the Babylonians exiled all the people of Judah to Babylon. After 70 years they began to return. In the early period, Nehemiah was one of their leaders. We later find Nehemiah expelling all of the women from Ashdod, from Moab, and from Ammon, the foreign non-Israelite women whom some of the people of Judah had married. Nehemiah sent them away. So the argument is that if it was permitted to marry such a woman, Nehemiah would not have sent them off. So we show this argument too is not pertinent, but that is what they argue, and therefore we will have to answer it.